I'm Emma-Louise Coffey and you're welcome to The Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. On this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, Management Consultant Nollaig Heffernan explains the importance on focusing time and money on areas of high return. And I first asked her about the main drivers of good decision making on farm.
When you see decisions made well on farm, it's usually because people have sat down and planned it. So ad hoc decisions, just going, off the cuff, I'll expand by 100 cows by next year, it's not sensible, it's not easy to do, and actually it's quite destructive to the system that you already have. So when you see a farm that's done it very well, they have planned it, they understand what their investment will be, and that investment isn't just about money, it's about their personal energy, it's about the other resources they have on farm, so the people around them, and when they do that properly, you can see that they understand that you should never engage in a project unless it has high return and reasonably low difficulty.
So if we look back to the open day, you spoke about a lean management tool, PIC. Can you give us an insight for people who may have missed it? What does that mean?
So when we look at the world of business, and I work across all sectors, there are many very simple models because in business, time is money. So you have a huge amount of information in front of you. How do you filter that down to make sure you're doing the best you can at any particular time? And using models is a really clever way of doing that. So most models in businesses will be 4 quadrants. So there'll be 2 axes. It's X versus Y. And when you use that, when you use that to filter information, you can come out with quite strong indication of where you should invest your time and your money. So something like a PIC diagram, it comes from lean management, and in any business there could be a number of projects you want to do. So which do you pick? Where do you invest your money? And when we look at the PIC diagram, the PIC describes low return versus low difficulty. So they're things that, maybe for example, if we looked at farming, a single litre of milk is low return and low difficulty if you're a dairy farmer because you already have the system set up. But you have to do a huge volume of that to get any return. So you can do that, but you need a large volume. When you look at the high return, low difficulty, that's the green area, that's go, go, go. So that's low hanging fruit, for example. They're quick wins. It's an investment of your resource and you're getting a good return for that. A lot of things on farm, when you're talking about any expansion or any investment, it's typically a challenge. So it's a high return, but high level of difficulty. So if you get it right, it could be it's really advantageous, but it's very easy to get it wrong. It's almost a slippery slope. And then if you do get it wrong, you can drop down into that kill zone, which is never engage in a project that is low return but high difficulty because it saps your energy, it saps your morale, it disengages people because you've done something and it hasn't worked. So you might start off with something that is in the challenge box, which would be the high return, high difficulty, by very carefully planning, by understanding the resources available, by implementing any time management tools. So you could work this tool with a lot of other tools that I would commonly speak about to Irish dairy farmers and UK dairy farmers. You can work these tools together so that you're making the best use of your time and energy at any point. And in a scenario that is high return, high challenge, and you believe and you know it's right for your business, you shouldn't engage with that project until you have it moved across to the high return, low difficulty, within reason, because obviously there's still a level of risk. And that would be, for example, if you were going to build a new shed, getting the right people to investigate the land before you decide to build, having maybe a project manager on site so it doesn't run over time. Best use, getting a good loan or getting good finance that you're capable of paying off. Understanding that you need where your resources are coming from, and doing that effectively, you can get the job done properly, fit for purpose, and everybody feels good after it, and they're willing to try the next project.
And I suppose, you've given a really good example of where we're in the situation where there's high difficulty. Can you give us an example of the high return, low difficulty area? So you mentioned this is the low hanging fruit for farmers. So what are these areas?
So we see now with through Teagasc research and all of the thinking that's coming out of Moorepark, that high return, low difficulty, that you start off and somebody's never measured grass before, that's going to be high return but high difficulty from as they see it because they've never done it before. So it's a challenge, it's a new way of thinking, it's adding an extra task maybe to your task list. But when you get it right, you get such a good return on the grass in terms of quality of milk, etc. You're using your land efficiently, that actually through planning it properly, doing it well, it gets to a point where it's high return, low difficulty.
What are the decision tools we have used in the past? Say dairy farmers planning, I suppose in the last 5 to 10 years expanding. What are the decision tools farmers have taken in order to, I suppose, implement a plan, farm investment?
I think traditionally people have, it hasn't, the market certainly hasn't been as exposed. It hasn't been as high level of risk as there is now on an open market. And so people have, maybe just decided, well, it'd be nice to have an add-on, or it's just nice to spend a bit of money there, and potentially not thinking it through. Now, we know that farmers, I suppose there's an accusation that farmers don't plan very well. Clearly, farmers have a lot of planning capability because they know when they're calving, they know when the silage window's coming in. So there's times across the year that they are very good at planning in terms of the farm. They're maybe just not stepping back a little bit and thinking about how to plan it more as a business, rather than responding to the seasonal year in terms of the animals, actually stepping back a bit and planning their resource investment in that, and capitalising on what they do well already.
And from your experience, when we consider, return and difficulty, where are farmers spending the majority of their time at the moment?
Depends on the life of where that farm is in terms of its development history. So if it's a very well established farm, so some of the level of difficulty might be continuing to motivate staff. Maybe the farmer maintaining their own motivation within farming, just looking for those marginal gains. So maybe chasing milk quality more, maybe looking at breeding, looking at better grass measurement, for example, or growing more tonnage. So it's thinking that's for the well-established farm. For the expanding farm, the difficulty is that we, if you look at some of the research that maybe has come out of Moore Park, it's showing that at a certain level of cows you can cope. When you're in that expansion phase, there's that middle phase where you're adding on cows, but you don't have enough people, you don't have sufficient money in the business to take on an extra person. So that's very stretching. And the people say, well, with scale, you're going to have more time in your hands. But actually, there's an interim phase where you don't. You have to push past that phase in order to get to a scale that allows you to have more people in the system. So that can be very high difficulty and highly challenging for people. And in that lull, it's difficult when everybody else looks like they're doing well and you feel that you're really challenged and that you're under pressure all the time. It can be difficult to keep your head up and to push through that.
So I guess to sum up on that, depending on what stage you're at in terms of, I suppose age and the stage that the farm is at, the return and the difficulty can vary hugely in terms of, what is happening on the farm and also what you're capable of having. Looking at the high difficulty areas, what can you do to push into shifting that up to a low difficulty?
So many of the things that fail is it's primarily through lack of planning. So when you look at a project management concept, there's a huge amount of effort and investment that's put into planning. Now that often feels slow in the dairy sector, in farming community who are ready to act. It's a very reactive look. It's raining, we have to do something. Look, the grass is growing, we need to do something. The cattle are out on the road, we need to do something. So it's quite a action-oriented industry. And to remove the level of challenge or the level of difficulty and to get the most out of your return, you have to step back and take time and plan and think about it. And just as an industry, people have been slow to do that. That's the office work that the industry often runs away from, thinking that it's not real work. But actually, you make more money in the office than you do in the parlour, because you convert your milk, the quality of your milk, that money is converted through the office. So it's really about stepping back and saying, what are you trying to achieve? Do you know what you want from your business? Do you know what your succession plan is? Where do I put that investment? And educate yourself. And if you're not going to educate yourself, bring in good people who know what they're doing. So engaging with the people, the skill set that's already around you, your accountants, your solicitors. Is there a project manager nearby? Is there a good engineer nearby? Is there a well-established business that does this all the time and knows exactly, have experts within them? And farmers often panic because of the initial outlay of bringing in that expertise, but it's a short-term pain for a huge gain long-term. And also when you don't have to engage with other people, but if you're not going to bring in other people, you have to be very well informed on what you're doing. And remember, if you were taking on a project, something like a farm building, by you doing it, you're interfering with your other work anyway. So it's and so it goes on longer and longer. Whereas when you bring in somebody specific to do that, they can put and apply their time into it, and that project can be completed in a much shorter space of time than if you're adding it onto the work that you already have.
And just to pick up on that point, that the time spent in the office is much more valuable than often what you're doing in the parlour, in that it's the decision making and it's the strategic planning for the farm. I've heard this once or twice before, and I think sometimes people do laugh at it, because in the parlour you're actually harvesting the milk, and that's what's bringing the income to the farm. Just delve a little bit more into what you mean by that, in terms of making the right decisions for the farm and giving yourselves time to step back from the day-to-day process.
Well, if you think about the return that you get from your milk, that goes out the window pretty quickly if you're not legally compliant. If your quality is poor, if you're not following up on your paperwork, if you're not registering your calves properly, if you're not compliant with standards and with regulation, well, actually your money, you lose value on that milk, on that litre litre of milk, and also you're not working on your business. So majority of Irish dairy farms are extremely established, and so the movement is away. And even in terms of a farmer and his own life cycle or her own life cycle, it becomes less about working in and more about working on. So it's the opportunity to develop that business further, to maximise what you already have. And that requires sitting back, thinking about it, following up on your bank reports, following up on your financial statements, following up with your accountant, making sure that you have everything in place that allows you to convert your milk for the best value possible.
And finally, Nollaig, if we consider time, and a lot of farmers will say they're time poor and they're working long hours, they're working 7 days a week. How can people take a step back and improve their lifestyle and reduce the hours worked?
Yeah, I think if we went back to the PIC model that we were describing earlier, high return and low difficulty, a very quick thing that all farmers can do is a simple exercise. We've been doing it, actually, we did it in the Moore Park Open Day in 2017, is just really thinking about the whole year. Not just responding to what's happening today, not just responding to what's happening to the week, because time pollutes time. So if I mess up my time today, it impacts tomorrow. And it's thinking about the big picture of time, not just today's time. And there's a really simple way of doing that. You can get a yearly planner. You could do it up as an Excel spreadsheet, or you could buy one from a local stationery shop, and one of the things I tend to do is I get discussion groups or farming groups to colour it in, because it's quite visual. You can see it straight away. So if we think of the difference, if you think of something as high tech as an airplane, it uses an analog clock. It doesn't use a digital clock, because you can glance at it very quickly and you know where you're at. By colouring in the planner, by colouring in the calendar, you can see at a glance. You can walk into your office and say, where are we at the moment? What do I need to be thinking about? What's my focus for today? So that's a low hanging fruit. It's high return, low difficulty. It doesn't cost you a piece of paper. And it's just sitting back and saying, what is the time available to farming? What do I need to get done this year? What's my priority task? And it's a learnable skill set. So for people who say they don't know about time, if we look traditionally at farming, or certainly under quota, most people were working in their own businesses for themselves. Their time was their own. It didn't really matter how they used that time. When we look at the industry wanting to be an attractive industry for children to take over from their parents, when we want to bring in employees into farms, when we want to make it an industry that's an employer of choice, you've got to be more conscious of time, because you're now dealing with other people's time. And that's just about reviewing your own practices. What I would say is, are you slack during the spongy part of the day? So between milkings, if you're a twice a day milker, you've got most efficient on farm during milking, because you're doing a very set task at a very set time, and you're totally focused on that. So that's highly, highly efficient. It's that middle part of the day that isn't accounted for. So if you want to be really good at time management, break up your day and account for each hour. So say I'm milking I finish milking at X time, I'm going to spend an hour on my paperwork. I'm going to spend the next hour, or I might, if I hate paperwork, I might just start off at 20 minutes and just get through that 20 minutes and then realise that actually I get quite a lot done and it's not as evil and awful as I thought it was. And then just allot time during the day and pick a finishing time and hold fast to it. With farmers, I get pushback a lot when I talk about finishing at a specific time. If you cannot finish at a specific time for the majority of the year, well, then there's something toxic in your system, because, people always say to me, oh, we're working with animals. Well, if you're having an issue with animals every evening at 6 o'clock, there's something bigger there. So it's just having the confidence to say, I can be a 5 to 5 farmer, or I can be a 6 to 5 farmer, and to do that with pride and not to be afraid that the neighbours will think you're not good at working. Be proud of that, because by having time and space for yourself, you make yourself a better farmer, you make yourself more resilient, and you actually enjoy it, and that enjoyment comes through to your family, comes through to the community in general, and people want to be part of that. They want to see what you're doing and why you're enjoying it.
And I suppose that's a really nice point, because we would have had a new entrant dairy farmer, Mike Birmingham, from just outside Fermoy, and he said that he worked in construction, so he worked crazy hours, and then he went home and it was a beef farm, and he was working a lot, and there was very low return financially, and he said now, say when June comes, his children are on holidays, and he said it's kind of game over. He milks the cows in the morning and he's at home all day, and they do whatever they need to do in terms of family time, and then back to the cows in the afternoon. I suppose, look, that's a really good top tip that we're going to finish on in terms of the yearly planner. And I suppose the year isn't lost. There's another 6 months to go, so I'd encourage people to get the yearly planner. Just to finish off, the top 3 tips once you put the yearly planner in front of you. What do you target?
So when you put the yearly planner in front of you, the first thing when you're doing the yearly planner is what I would say, discount the time not available to farming. So decide 2019, for the rest of 2019, I'm going to take every second weekend off, or I'm going to take my family on a trip a week during the summer holidays, whatever it is, and block that out. If you don't plan it, it will not happen. And you know that yourself. Farmers have that conversation with themselves. Oh, I'll take a day off next week. Well, actually, when it comes to that, it never happens, because something else takes over. By protecting time, so by saying this is time I'm having off, you're far more focused during the week, and you work more applied. It's amazing. I had a discussion group, and a farmer said it's amazing how much work you can get done in the last 10 minutes before evening milking. And what does that mean? It means there's a focus, there's a definite ending, and that you can apply yourself. So focus is really important. Discipline. The discipline to put down tools at whatever time you decide is your finishing time. So say if you're going to finish your working day at 6 o'clock, the discipline to walk away from whatever you're doing. Because you have to ask yourself, will anybody die and will you lose millions? And that rarely happens. There's only a couple of industries where you can answer yes to either of those. So it's just that confidence to walk away and say, what's the worst that'll happen if I don't finish this job today? And I'll crack back on with it tomorrow. Once I've done my cows and I know my cows are safe, I can get back on with that job, and I'll probably have far more energy doing it tomorrow morning, because I'm fresh and ready to do it. And actually on that, for what we find with a lot of farms is, we spoke earlier, Emma-Louise, about the importance of office work. Office work is often left because it is not liked. It is often left till the end of the day. That's too easy an excuse to get away from it. So you're doing something you don't like and you're tired. You're doing something that's extremely important and you're tired. So it's protecting that as important time and putting that up to the earlier hours of the day where you're fresh and you're ready to tackle it, and you do a good job at it. And when you do a good job at something, you feel good about yourself, and you're far more willing to engage with that the next time. So it's focus, it's discipline, and it's just challenge yourself. This is a great time of year to challenge yourself, because as you described the farmer earlier, it's game over. The main pressures of the farming year are over, and there's opportunities to try something different.
And I guess, look, for some people this will be new and it is change. But I think, once you do it once or twice, it can become a lot easier, and you become more comfortable with doing it. Thank you, Nollaig.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Emma-Louise, for having me speak.
And that's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast. And my thanks to Nollaig Heffernan for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and join me next time for your Dairy Edge.